Of the 21 State Department employees suffering related symptoms, CBS News has discovered that a top security official was targeted by what's believed to be sonic attacks at the American Embassy in Cuba. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson told John Dickerson on Face the Nation Sunday that the U.S. may be closing its embassy there.
On Cuba, some senators have suggested closing down the embassy there. Should that happen?
We have it under evaluation. It's a very serious issue with respect to the harm that certain individuals have suffered. We've brought some of those people home. It's under review.
Steve Dorsey has been covering the story from the beginning from Washington and joins us now. Well, Steve, as we just heard from Secretary Tillerson, the administration is considering shutting down the embassy in Havana. How likely is that?
Well, sources tell me that's not likely at this moment. Remember, the embassy was only reopened in 2015 after decades of cold, frosty relations between the U.S. and Cuba, especially during the Cold War. What might be a more likely scenario is some sort of drawdown of non-essential personnel from the embassy in Havana. We've already been seeing that with the effects of Hurricane Irma on Cuba, with the State Department allowing some folks to return back to the U.S. That embassy was partially damaged by the storm. And, of course, a number of diplomats, though the U.S. is not yet saying, have been allowed to leave the embassy that have been affected by this strange series of attacks that have been going on since late 2016.
And, Steve, what do we know about this official who was targeted in these attacks?
Well, this is really remarkable. This is one of the highest-ranking, most senior leaders of the U.S. Embassy in Havana. In fact, in charge, Elaine, of security and personnel and law enforcement activities, known as the Regional Security Officer. And this person acts as a liaison between the embassy and U.S. Diplomatic security and foreign police in Cuba, acts as an advisor to the embassy, to the chief of the mission there currently, and this person, we understand from a source, is now going through medical treatment and is one of these 21 Americans who have been affected by these attacks.
Meanwhile, the U.S. and Cuba will be holding a bilateral commission in Washington Tuesday. Is it safe to assume, Steve, these incidents will be discussed? Do we know what else will be on the docket?
Absolutely. The State Department Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs does say that the U.S. plans to bring up this issue, these health attacks on American diplomats going on in Cuba, to the Cuban envoys meeting with State Department officials here in Washington on Tuesday. But we also understand that the U.S. has plans to talk about other things, including national security. This is one of regular talks scheduled between the U.S. and Cuba that have been taking place since the U.S. restored diplomatic ties back in 2015.
All right, we'll be watching closely. Steve Dorsey, thanks so much, Steve.
Thanks, Elaine.